Is the Aluula really worth the price point? So we're going to be diving into the 2025 Strike V5. I was fortunate enough to be able to test out the 3.5 meter edition in the Aluula model. I also used it with the boom, which was a really interesting experience as well. Like my video on the 2025 Origin from F1, I just wanted to point out the context of how I'll be reviewing this wing. So I put up all the different wings that I've used in the last 3, 4, almost 5 years of winging, just so that you have a bit of a baseline as to what I'm comparing them to overall. The other thing I mentioned in the Origin video, which will be linked below if you missed it, I mainly ride in anything from sort of 10 to 30-ish knots is what we see the most. It's normally in bay conditions here at Port Phillip Bay, sou'westers, close chop that gets pretty built up when it's windy. So you get a bit of surfing and some bay chop, which is a lot of fun. Strong northerlies, flat water, that sort of stuff. So not really winging in the ocean with wave energy. That's the context for this review. Let's kick it off with how does this wing feel on the water? It's definitely the stiffest and highest performance 3.5 meter that I've used. And I think the technology of the Aluula and the panel layout of the V5 will be really strong in the larger sizes. Like I think that benefit would be extended in the larger sizes. In saying that, with the 3.5 meter, I got up and going and it felt really, really efficient. It was similar feeling to when you go from a low aspect foil to a higher aspect foil, and it just feels slippery through the water. The V5 feels slippery through the air. It's difficult to say how much of this is attributed to the new panel layout versus the new material. It definitely is really easy to throw the Strike V5 Aluula around because of how light it is. I found it to be really, really good at going upwind, throwing it through tacks and jibes, backwinding, carving 360s, those sort of free riding maneuvers. It was just so efficient and so fast through the air that it made it really easy to do all these different things. But I did find it not as stable when flagged out. I don't know if it's the new panel layout for the V5s or they've just continued a little bit further away from being surf oriented with the Strike, similar to the V4. It seems that to achieve stability at speed and to have a really highly efficient wing, they have to make this design decision where they stray a little bit away from stability when flagged out. And it showed a little bit in the 3.5 meter. So for those coming from other F1 wings, it's quite familiar to the V4 and to the V3. Being Aluula, it definitely feels a decent amount lighter in the hand, and especially through tacks and jibes, those sort of maneuvers. It just feels like it goes where it needs to go a little bit easier, and the added stiffness was definitely noticeable, especially on the upwinds when you hook into the harness and you're really cranking. Feels very stiff, almost tending towards a PPC style frame, but with the added benefit of not being as heavy as the Dyneema sort of material wings. I also found that the canopy didn't flag in the wind when sheeted on. I've found in the past with previous models, like the V2 especially, when you started getting up in the wind range, the trailing edge, the leech of the wing would actually flag out a bit to the point where you'd almost consider putting like little leech battens in to try and stop that behavior from happening. The V5 relative to the V4 definitely feels like the panel layout has improved again on the V4. The V4 was already a really great wing. The V5's just taken that extra step, and the only way I can describe it for those that haven't used F1 wings or haven't used some of the recent Strikes is relative to other wings that I've used, F1 seems to have automatic speed. It's this balance between stiffness and flexibility in the wing's frame and canopy that even on a gusty day when you're riding through gusts, it doesn't push you into positions that you have to counteract. So you'll be riding along, sheeted on, pumping up wind, and you'll hit a gust. With some wings, it'll get thrown and you'll have to try and counteract it. With F1 wings, what I've found is it's just more automatic. You just lock in, you look at the horizon or you look where you're going, and you don't have to think. The wing sort of just finds its neutral position really nicely. It's definitely a really pleasant experience out in the water with any F1 wing that I've had so far. But we do need to address the elephant in the room. Let's do that through asking, who is this wing really for, and running through some pros and cons. So pros and cons first. It's super stiff, it's super light, it goes upwind really well, it gets through maneuvers really well. But cons, the price point being that Aluula, and the surf performance, I'm calling it, which essentially is just the flagging performance, how it flags out. For the price point, you'd argue you'd want something that flags out a little bit nicer than what it does. I could have definitely made some improvements on that through swapping out the boom for a hard handle on the front and a soft handle on the back, or things like that to reduce that swing weight, make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit more balanced potentially to flag out. The type of rider that I see this wing being for is the person that is focused on freestyle, on high-end performance free ride, so pushing small foils really fast, sharp turns, you know, wanting to be able to throw the wing around without having flex or feedback coming back at you from that flex, and someone chasing the ultimate upwind performance, going as fast as you can upwind. And it's probably the closest thing we'll see in the F1 line to a race wing. In saying that, if you are in the racing context, you pretty much have to go and find something that's dual skin, which F1 is not offering. So you'll have to go and find things like the PPC M1R, you know, Ozone's wings. So the elephant in the room, is Aluula worth it? And for me, at a 3.5 meter wing, I'd say no. A 3.5 meter wing for me, I would usually have pigeonholed away, ready to go on those ridiculously windy days as a thing that just gets me upwind, and for me to turn around and surf some pretty wild bait chop that windy days bring. If you are someone that is really pushing your freestyle game, then I think that's where this Aluula wing comes in. It's super light, it's super stiff, it's gonna carry you into the air so high relative to other models of wings. So I think that's who it's for. It's a really cool experience, and I'm really grateful that I got to give it a go. But for the average person chasing a really fun free ride session, you have so many other options. And that includes just the standard V5, which will have most of these benefits. Just not quite as stiff and not quite as light. It's really up to you where you spend your money. I'd personally be pushing more towards the standard V5s. And if you're in the process of updating your gear, I've got some other videos on the latest F1 gear here.